Excellent.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm super excited to be here, and I have so much. In fact, it might be too much, so forgive me ahead of time. I just have so many tools and gifts. I just want to make sure that you get them. But here are the ground rules. If there's something that I am putting down that you're not picking up, like let me know. It is my responsibility that you get the gifts. So if I'm not being clear, put something in the chat, put your hand up, put your voice in the space because I want to make sure that you get all the gifts. And if you have a question, in my experience, that means that somebody else has a question very similar to that. So again, this is safe space, and I just encourage you to ask questions and just make sure that you have an understanding of all the things. As Shira said, today it's really about some of the fundamentals around grant writing, and then we're going to do more of a hands-on, some toolkit stuff next week. So it's a dynamic duo of a workshop. So I'm gonna get started, and I'm gonna just kind of tell you how I'm gonna set up the delivery. First, I'm gonna start by talking a little bit about my research because I want to give you a reason to believe why this my approach to grant writing works, and that it really came in a way that I've been very thoughtful and intentional about, and I've been working to try and spread this this way in an effort to help organizations be more impactful in their grant writing efforts. So I'm going to probably take about 10 minutes to just give you like a backstory. So do forgive me for the delay before we jump into the content, but I just want you to really connect with why I'm extremely passionate about the work that I do. So, okay, I'm going to get started, but again, I fully encourage you to again put your voice in the space, put a note in the chat, raise your hand. You got eyes on the chat. So again, this is you however far you lean in is what you're gonna get out of it, plus more. All right, I'm gonna start with sharing my screen, and then I'm going to share my slides, and we are going to get started. And again, I'm going to tell you right now, I already know I got too many slides, but it's going to be great. All right, so we're starting today with grant writing fundamentals, and we have lots of steps on the journey. So a lovely lineup after grant writing, strategic planning. Oh my goodness, I love strategic planning as well, and this could be very helpful for you all. And then we're gonna start the new year with some organizational goal setting, planning your work, working your plan. Just really awesome, like implementable, usable skill set. So I'm super excited about that. I'm gonna save a introduction slide because I'm gonna talk about myself already too much, and so I'm gonna just jump into you know uh, my research, and it kind of tells you a little bit about who I am. But today, what we're really doing is that we're diving into the grant writing fundamentals. Like, and I call this is critical because not every grant is the same. So you know in my mind, I can just give you some of the critical components that you can apply to any grant opportunity. And that's why this really works. So we're going to walk through those fundamentals, and I'm going to give you some critical tools that I think will be extremely useful for you. And then I'm going to also put in your to-go box this understanding the rest of the grant management process, because honestly the grant writing is one component of it, but when you understand all of the components of it, it's very helpful for you in having success at it. So our agenda is just this. I'm going to give you a reason to believe, and that kind of starts with my doctoral research. And then I'm going to pop into the grant management process. And then I'm going to really lift up the key components of the grant proposal. And then we're going to wrap up with your to-go box. That's the plan for the next 80 minutes. And again, if I'm going to intentionally ask you to put some responses in the chat when you see the little chat storm, but anytime you have a question, please do put it in the chat, put your hand up, put your voice in the space. And again, because there's so many slides, I tried to put little green stars by the slides I thought were really useful and important. So as you go back through the information, because you will get all of the slides, The session is recorded, so you can go back, and all of this information is at your fingertips. So putting the little green star on the slide just kind of gives you something to go back to that might be useful for you. So I want to go back a little bit and I want to talk a little bit about my research and my work, how I got here, as a way to give you a reason to believe, in my approach around grant writing. So, you know, I uh, I I like to think of like COVID, for example, as my second black swan event. A black swan event is something that happens that you could not plan for, you couldn't see. It was unexpected and it happened. My first black swan event was the housing crisis of 2008. And I was working this really big job and doing all of this work in real estate development. And then the mortgage crisis hit and I was completely caught off guard. And I decided to go back to get a PhD because I felt like I had been doing so much work on the front lines that I needed to go upstream to get some additional skill set so that I can bring those skills back to the front line to continue to help the individuals working in the nonprofit sector, really trying to make an impact. So my work has always been around urban economic development. And what was really powerful for me is that in my journey, I had seen organizations work really well together in collaboration. And, sometimes the collaborations would work and sometimes they would not work. And I felt like if I could bring some additional insight, information, intelligence on how to build more impactful collaborations, that I could help these organizations really working on the front lines to achieve the synergy, this idea that something could happen greater than an organization operating on its own. And so I went into a doctoral program at a school of business, really with the desire to build better collaborations. And so I started that work based upon the lived experience of some of the most complex work, community work that I had seen. And that was around building affordable housing. And so I interviewed all of these leaders of affordable housing development, ones who had been successful, those who had failed, just so that I could have a good understanding of what was success like and how could we mimic that success and how could we like mitigate the failures. And so I looked at different types of partnerships and I had all of this data and I didn't find anything that they would give me a PhD for. It was stuff like trust was important for collaboration. Okay, nobody's giving PhDs out for that. And then one day I was out walking my dog, actually carrying my dog because she's gone now, but she was blind then. So there was a lot of carrying. So no phones, no nothing. And I realized that there was something powerful in that mindful space where I didn't have any distractions. And I realized that how is it that in the same very, difficult circumstances were some collaborations able to be successful and others failed? Why was that? And so I decided to just start over and reanalyze all of that data I was swimming in and looked at the moment when the collaborations encountered a barrier and looked to see what they had done. And so it was really fascinating because despite if the collaboration was successful, if they had experience or anything, they all had the same common barriers. Funding barriers, not enough resources, partner barriers, not enough experience, for example, community barriers, NIMBYism, not in my backyard, government barriers, couldn't get the permits or things like that. But critical differences emerged when it came to what successful and less successful leaders did when they encountered those barriers. And what emerged was this idea about the importance of emotional intelligence. And when these leaders of these collaborations encountered obstacles, what they did, like successful collaborations looked at the future, less successful collaborations looked at the short term. The focus, successful collaboration focused on mission, less successful collaborations focused on the deal. Successful collaborations were agile, they were flexible, they adapted, and the less successful collaborations failed earlier. And so I spent like 6 years really developing what I felt was what I call this collaboration blueprint. And then I tested that with another sort of quantitative analysis where I surveyed 416 ordinary leaders and managers to really prove and validate what I had discovered in my research. And so what emerged from that, and one of my critical tools that we're going to talk about later, is what I like to call the ABCDs of successful collaboration, and more on that. But let me just speak to what those are. So again, if you want to have a successful collaboration, and this is a critical tool because oftentimes when we're going after grant funding, we want to identify potential partners. So the importance of autonomy, that even though you're going to collaborate with a partner, it doesn't mean that they're going to lose their independence. A boundary spanning, that telling the partner that we have to go outside of the collaboration, get what the collaborative partners need, and come back to the collaboration in order to be impactful in the work. The next was actually shared vision, but ABSD didn't sound as nice as ABCD. So shared vision, common vision, it felt pretty interchangeable. So this idea of a common vision was really, really critical. So as you're building your partners, this ability to create a shared vision, because what people co-create, they sustain. So when you can create that shared vision, you've really given resilience to your collaboration. And then the D is all about design thinking and design attitude. And what design attitude essentially says is that you're willing to imagine a future that doesn't yet exist. This notion that even as faculty, as teachers, and I'm an academic, I teach at the university, and we often teach our students to have a decision attitude. And a decision attitude is like, oh, choice A or choice B. But historically, the choice A or B have not been good choices for us. Why are they still on the table? A design attitude says those are not options for us. We're taking choice R. And so this willingness to create a solution that doesn't yet exist is what a design thinking and design attitude is all about. And the other components that emerged were this notion of this active listening. If you're going to collaborate with another organization, you really have to listen intently to what they are saying and not saying, because you want to make sure, and this is the second piece, that there's mutual benefit in the organizations working together. So if you don't have something to gain from the collaboration and I don't have something to gain from the collaboration, if we're both not operating very selfishly, it is highly likely that that collaboration is going to fail. But when we're very selfish about what we want to get out of that collaboration, we're really helping our collaboration to be successful. Okay, so this next slide is kind of theoretically, but just bear with me. So the existing research talked about these preconditions, process, and outcomes when it came to collaboration. And so my sort of like, they talk about getting a PhD, you add your leaf to the tree. My leaf to the tree is that we shouldn't focus on outcomes. We should set our eyes further and instead focus on impact. Because when we set our eyes farther, that's where we can land. We can do much greater. And so I have all of this theoretical concepts that I've tested and validated, but I knew, being a practitioner myself, that I needed to deliver it in a way that practitioners could understand. And so all of those preconditions, that active listening, that mutual benefit, exploring mutual benefit, that would come in the visioning stage, because nonprofits understand visioning. And then the ideation could come under a SWOT analysis, and then the logic modeling can come in the outcomes. So I had created this really amazing tool that I could really build these high impact collaborations. And I was extremely excited because I felt like I had discovered something really powerful. And I started calling up, colleagues, because, I was a practitioner before I went to get a PhD. So I got some street credibility, right? So I'm calling up, organizations, and I'm like, hey, I could help you build a really amazing collaborative partnership. Nobody calls me back. I mean, it was rude, really. And then I remembered something that I really think is important, that we have to love people the way that they need to be loved. So then I just picked up the phone and I was like, because the one thing about high impact collaborations is that they can build high impact programming, and then they can get funding for those high impact programs. And so then I just recalled the numbers and I was like, hey, I could get you $1 million to fund that program. So then they invited me in, and it certainly did happen. So I started in 2011. I'm a couple of years into into my PhD program, I'm testing the collaboration blueprint tool. Now, for me, I'm testing the collaboration, but an unintended consequence was getting the funding to help organizations run these high impact collaborations to do this high impact programming in these urban communities. So these like, community-based nonprofits are getting like, you know, millions of dollars to do the programming. And so I was like, okay, 2011, that worked. Let me try it again. So I did it in 2012 and again got another 800,000 for a community kitchen, and then I did it again 3 times in 2014, $2 million for this Mom's First program around infant mortality, a food hub, a workforce development program. Then I was just like, well, let's keep moving on this test. And again, I started a program, designed a training program to teach the skills because I was like, well, I could help one nonprofit a year, maybe two, or I could really teach these skills. And then if I could teach the skills, 20 people participate, maybe 20 organizations get helped. And so I continue to use the tool to continue to raise resources all around across the board, just in very different spaces, but all using the same technique. And I can give you 31 million reasons why I think that leaning into this approach around grant writing is extremely powerful. I talk about this work in my book, in Organizational Collaboration by Design. And one day I'm going to finish my book on grant writing. I'm calling it the Grant Writers Cookbook. And it's called the Grant Writers Cookbook because I'm going to come out for 1 second. I call it the Grant Writers Cookbook because you know how people who know how to cook, they're like making stuff and they can taste stuff and they're like, this is missing, a little paprika or something. Like, I don't have that skill set. You know what I need? I need directions. And this is a powerful piece around grant writing. Like, following the directions is a really critical piece. And so having some direction, and if you've ever, for example, written a federal grant, I've seen people just pull up the instructions, the NOFA, the Notice of Funding Availability for a federal grant. They're like 80 pages. People are like checked out. They're like, no, I can't even get through the direction pages. I'm not about to put myself through the grant writing struggle. But again, you think all of the information you need is right there. They give you like a dictionary. They tell you what font they want you to use and the margin size. Everything you need is right there in the directions. So but until I get that book done, this right here, explaining what the fundamentals of grant writing is really a powerful next best thing. So this is why I'm extremely passionate about this work, and this is why I think it's super helpful. And now I'm going to dive into the grant writing fundamentals. Any questions before I jump in? Just want to make sure. All right. Good. All right. All right. I'm sharing my screen and yay. I'm sharing my screen and then I'm going to share my slides and we're going to get at it. Again, I welcome and invite you to ask questions, and this is your space and it's my responsibility to make sure you get the gifts. All right. So this is how I want to start. I want to start with the grant management process. There's several components, and I've divided them into 6 components of the grant management process. There is the planning and the research, then there's the writing and the submission, the fiscal accountability, programmatic accountability, performance measurement, and communication. Now today, during the webinar, we're going to focus on the planning and the research and the writing and the submission. And then in the to-go box, there's information about the other components. But I want you to pop into the chat. Where are your pain points? Are your pain points when it comes to grants? Is it in the planning and the research? Is it in the writing and the submission? Is it in the fiscal accountability, or is it in the programmatic accountability side? Is it in that performance measurement side? Is it on the communication side? Where do you feel your pain mostly? And I'm looking at the chat now, okay? All right, writing and submission, okay? Planning and research, all right? Okay, good, okay, all right, good. Okay, excellent, okay, excellent, okay, good. This is good intelligence. Let's jump in because we're going to cover a bit on all of it that can give you some really great and wonderful insight. All right. good. This is great. Ooh wee. All right. And also, it allows me to know where I might want to send some additional follow-up material because I see that performance measurement coming up, and I got a lot of good stuff that we could use on that. And the logic model, which I'll speak to later, can be extremely helpful on the performance and measurement side. All right, good. Okay, jumping back in. Thank you for engaging. Okay, let's start with the planning and the research. Now, these are going to be some awesome slides because you're going to be able to go back to them and get the information that you need. So when I think about this first component, it is so critical that we ground ourselves in the data and the research so that we can deliver both a quantitative and a qualitative grounding. And so when I say qualitative, that means like we need to tell those amazing stories that we can tell, but we also need to have a data grounding as well. So we need to have both quantitative, the data, and qualitative, the stories, because we don't know who is reviewing our grants. We don't know if the person is moved qualitatively through the stories or quantitatively through the numbers. So we don't take any chances. We put both quantitative and qualitative data and information in our grant submissions because we have to love people the way they need to be loved, And so this becomes extremely important. And the first step in that is knowing where to get the good data. So these are what the next slides are going to outline for you. So these are like my personal go-to sources. I only teach what I use because I can validate that they work. So the first go-to are federal resources. Now, let me tell you, I've been doing this work for a long time, and the census data has never been easier to access. It used to be a time where it was complicated just finding it. Now you go to data.census.gov, you can put in, your city, and you can look at the city, the county, the metropolitan statistical area, the zip code, the census tract, all of that good information is there, and you can tell a compelling story. I'm going to give you some examples, and you will see why being able to tap into the census data to create a sense of urgency that is data informed and data based, you're grounding it in this, again, quantitative data. It helps you tell a compelling story. You're letting the data tell the story for you, and you're just validating and building upon that a solution that you know is going to work. That's powerful grant writing. The BLS is another kind of source because I do a lot of stuff around economic development and job creation. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics is also another great source for me. The second area is there's so many amazing think tanks and forums. And again, you're going to find the ones that work for you. So again, Aspen Institute, they do a lot of work around entrepreneurship. They have all of this research available and free and recent. Because you're applying for these grants, they're like, even the federal funding, they're like, we need data that's within the last 5 years. You need recent stuff. You need to be able to tap into compelling data and trusted data and information that helps you tell your story and why your work is so critical. Brookings is another great source. The Urban Institute, MDRC, I don't even know what that stands for, but whenever I want to have some data on youth, hard to employ populations, returning citizens, veterans, MDRC, that's my go-to spot. So you will find the data sources that make sense for you. And you know what? I'm just going to pull up an example of that because it sometimes might feel overwhelming when you have to tap into this data and information, but I'm here to tell you it is extremely accessible. So let me give you an example so that you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so let me share screen. Okay. So ndrc.org, our issues we focus on, or our work. And you can see, let me move this out the way, forgive me. All right. So, okay, let's accept this. So you can see here's what they're writing about: early childhood, K through 12 education, post-secondary education, young people, income and family support, employment and economic mobility, housing and community, criminal justice. So here is information for you. I'm just going to click on young people. You can see this information, you can look, you can search it, you can find their summary reports, you can get the full document. And here, it was done in May 2024. You can, here's the summary here. You can pull this information into your own grant writing and reference this report, and it just shows you as you're making your argument. I'm not saying this, the data and the research is saying these things are important. And this is a powerful way that you build your approach. All right, so again, free, full reports, relevant information, recent information. All right, going back to my slides. All right, sharing my screen and then going back to my slides now. Okay, foundation sponsored. Now we're going to go back to the foundation sponsored later to learn about availability of grants. But for now, foundation sponsored websites also give you a ton of reports and research for free and areas that they are concerned about or fund. So Annie Casey has a ton of information around youth. Rockefeller Foundation, they do a lot of work around economic development and entrepreneurship. Is Kauffman Foundation. Robert Wood Johnson is social determinants of health. So you can go to these foundation sites and while later we'll look at them to see what the grant guidelines are, right now we're looking at them to look at the reports that they provide, the data and the information that's available for us. Another source are the different university sites. So many universities across the country, around the world, have all of these research centers. Harvard has a great housing research center. University of Michigan has like this smorgasbord of information and data available for you. Just so much good stuff. And this gem right here is a sleeper, but extremely powerful. These management consulting firms, I mean, I could find data that was like 30 days old. So McKinsey and Company has amazing research, IBM, A.T. Kearney, KPMG, all of this great free research. It is well done. It is your ability to understand it is just really awesome. It's super, super amazing. All right, good. Now, I just added this yesterday because I thought it was important to add. The thing that is important as well is just to understand that there are grant sources available, just like there are grant research available on the foundation side. So when we think about going after these grants, there are different sources and places where we can find the information. The foundation is a great place for us to find grant dollars. Corporate grants and corporations are another source, government grants, and then there's some resources that I want to provide for you. So I just want to say a couple of things about each of these sources of grants. So the foundations are the ones that we know the most about, but sometimes they're the least understood because we don't really understand how they make their decisions on who they're going to fund. But just remember that foundations, they were established to support charitable efforts. It's their job to give away the dollars. But we also have to understand that they can change their priorities. So it could be that a foundation cared about these things 3 years ago, but maybe it's something different, this year. And it's also important to remember that foundation dollars should be a part of your funding mix, not necessarily the entire thing. So you're always thinking about foundation dollars and other ways to generate funding for your organizations. So some advantages, again, they're required to give away the dollars. Sometimes the foundation gifts are so amazing because they're the larger gifts, or maybe they're multiple year gifts. And boy, is that super helpful for nonprofit organizations. The information is available. You can go on their site. You can see, what the funding guidelines are. And my favorite is that when you get one foundation grant, you should use that as leverage to get another grant. Because once somebody has given you a grant, now it's all about to say, well, they gave me a grant, so I know you too want to back a winner. And so using that gift as a way to get more dollars is really important. And it's really, we have to fight that urge to say, oh, we got a grant, I can rest. No, oh, we got a grant, I need to go after more money. Yes, that's the direction that you want to go into. But there are some disadvantages to foundation dollars. It's very competitive. It takes time to apply and receive the money. You can apply for those dollars in May, and you may not get noticed that you've received the dollars until, August, and you may not get your first check until September. So just have to be mindful of the timing of all those things. And we'll talk about that more in the programmatic components of the grant management process. It can be a limited investment or limited time or just for one particular project. So we have to be mindful that we don't have mission drift because, we are trying to go after grant dollars and we're feeling like, oh, these dollars kind of go with what it is that we're doing. It's just a bad idea. I know it feels right, but it's not, because we can only be distinctive in our areas of strength. And when we focus on those strengths, it is so impactful. But if we're experiencing mission drift trying to go after dollars, that's just, puts us in a bad situation. And then sometimes we feel like the reporting requirements can be overwhelming, and that can be tough. So there are lots of types of foundations: family foundations, community foundations, corporate foundations, public charities. They fund different areas, operations, programs. Occasionally you can find a capital, but it's very limited. Sometimes there's a challenge grant if I'll match whatever dollar you're able to raise. And some really interesting things that foundations are doing now, this program related investment, PRI, think about it as like a 0% interest loan, which is pretty amazing, quite honestly. So again, we're listing foundations here, but this listing is really to say, go to these foundations, see how to apply, see what their guidelines are. And again, the pro tip on foundation research, just make sure that you learn about the funder to make sure there's alignment, because you don't want to have the mission drift. Make sure that you fit within the funder's interests. Make sure that what you want money for is an eligible activity from the funder's guidelines. Make sure the dollar amount that you're asking for is in line with what they're proposing to give, because you don't want to count yourself out because they said they wanted grants of up to $25,000 and you put in for a $50,000 grant. You could disqualify yourself. You can also review the funder's website or their 990s to get a sense. You can look at other organizations that they fund and look at the 990s of those other organizations. Here's a wonderful resource for you for a way to check 990s for free, ProPublica. So you'll have that in your deck. A couple of words about corporations, some really good attractors if you're trying to get some support in that regard. Think about a PR opportunity that you can create. Like, can they put their logo on your website or, on your digital newsletter? Is there any volunteer opportunities that you could create for them so that they can tell their employees, we're partnering with this community-based nonprofit, and you get to go volunteer and support and help them. And that gives the employee the employee a really good feeling. And they feel like, man, I work for this amazing corporation because they partnered with this amazing nonprofit. Another thing is that you're looking for board members potentially who work in these corporations, because then you have like a competitive advantage for tapping into those grants provided by those corporations. And in your deck, I put lots of examples of some corporate funders. Apple, they do this sort of really interesting thing about matching employee volunteer time and matching employee gifts. So again, if you're thinking about your board, who works for Apple, that could be another strategic point of entry for you. AT&T, Bank of America, Coca-Cola, Costco's. Many of you have Costco's in your area. John Deere. There's lots of locations in California for John Deere. Geico, Microsoft, they do, this technology grant, State Farm, and it's just to give you a sense, Wells Fargo, Walmart, Whole Foods. just these examples then say, well, let me look at these other banks or let me look at these other insurance companies. And so there's so much opportunity available. So being able to get your grant writing skills bolstered can help. And then also the government grants, there's government grants that are just straight out grants. They can be fee for service or a contract, and you can get a government grant at the city, the state, or the federal level. So there's lots of levels to government grants. And grants.gov is like the granddaddy of the government website. Like some people like spend a lot of time on Facebook. I'm on grants.gov, so it's lots of fun. Other resources, there's lots of grant database resources. So Council of Foundation, Candid has a database, the Grantsmanship Center, and there's just a couple of other resources that I think is important. And because I always get a lot of questions about student scholarships, I put that little thing in there as well. Okay, I have another question for you. Charitable giving. What do you think? How much money do you think people are giving? How much money do you think people are giving? How much charitable giving do you think there is in the United States? Put a number in the chat. How much money do you think is given away every year? How many billions, Lori? How many? How much money? Popping okay, 100 billion, 500 million, 3 billion. Okay, let's see. Okay, Angela, 500 million. Okay. 100. 10 billion, 500 million, 200 billion. Okay, 4 billion. Okay, let's see. All right, 1.5 billion. Okay, 3 million, 500 million feels right. Okay, thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. 1 billion. Okay. Okay. All right, let me share my screen. All right, and now I'm going to share my slides. And let's see what we got. I'm gonna go back a little bit. I'm gonna go back to I have a report from 2018, so it tells giving for 2017 because it's a year behind. In 2018, giving was $410 billion. $410 billion. Billion. 70% of that money was given by individuals. We think the foundations is running this giving game. Individuals is giving out the most money. 70% of that money, individuals. Next up is foundations. 16% given by foundations. 9% by bequests, people leaving this in their wills. Given by corporations, 5%. Now, here's also the other interesting thing about the giving. Who gets the money? Religious organizations, 31%. Then education, 14%, 12% human services, 11% to foundations. I'm going to come out because I got words to say. Okay. This is what I tell people. You want to learn how to raise money? You want to learn how? Go to church, because clearly the church has got some tips. You go to church, they tell this compelling story, you're moved, by the story. They pass the basket a couple of times, so you got to ask often, So go to the second service for the word, but go to the first one to like get the tips and techniques. So just a side note. Okay, so for that number in 2018, do you think it went up or down? You just go up or down in 2019, which gauge 2018 in the chat. Up, okay, up, okay. See some thumbs up too. Up. Okay. Let's see. Sharing my screen. Okay, we got it down. Okay, good. I love it. All right, and now I'm going to share my slides. So in 2018, which looked at 2017, it was 410 billion. So the next year, up $427 billion. Foundation giving went up 18%. Corporate giving went up 5%. Giving by individuals went down 1%. Still, religion's still top billing on where to get. Okay, 2020, which tells 2019, so we're pre-COVID. Do you think it went up or down in 2019? We're at 427 billion in this 2018, for giving in 2018. The 2020 report, which tells what Americans gave in 2019. Do you think it went up or down? All right, we got some We got some, okay, up, still in the up. Okay, okay, excellent. You're right. It went up $449.6 billion. Okay, 2020. So now we're going to look at the 2021 report, which looks at giving in 2020. Now this is a COVID year. What do you think? Up or down? This is like, where we go here. Okay, okay, down. Okay, there's some, okay, sideways. That's true. There's some, right? That's a good point, Matt. Yes. All right, let's see where we are. Okay, and up 471 billion dollars. Billion dollars. Okay, let's check one more year. Post-COVID, 2021. Do you think it went up or down or sideways, stayed flat? What do you think for the next year? All right. Oh, make sure I'm sharing my screen, which maybe I wasn't. Hold on. All right, here we go. So, this is the COVID year, 471 billion. So the next year after COVID, you think we went up or down? So 2021. So this report in 2022. Let's see what we got. Okay, now there's some thinking that maybe we're going down or maybe it's going up. We don't know. It's just apparently a lot of money in these streets that we don't know about, right? The next year, it continued to go up, $484.5 billion. $484.85 billion. Amazing. All right, I have one more data point for giving in 2022. Report for June 2023. Actually, I might have a 2020. I better look for it. Do you think it went up or down? I mean, this is pretty amazing. 484 billion. You think we're still going up? We are still going up, $499.33 billion. There's lots of money available. We just need to get our strategy together, get our research together, and get our grant writing skills together so we can go after it. All right? All right, let's see if there's any questions. I'm going to stop share for a bit. Questions or thought?
I have a question. Sorry, I was trying to find the raised hand, but I
No
couldn't.
worries, please.
Okay. I'm wondering, this might be hard to identify, but in the data, is it showing who's the most engaged contributors? Because I'm wondering if like what we're seeing with all this up has a lot to do with like Gen Z especially, or our younger donors, or just kind of where that needle is, and maybe where people aren't, so we can focus also engaging them. So yeah.
Absolutely. That data is so there. And I'll make a note to forward you a couple of slides on giving generationally to give you some insight on that. I'll do that.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'll make
love,
sure.
love all of this.
Yay. Good. I'll make sure that Shira gets it so everybody gets it. So we'll set up so you have all of that good information. So if it's useful for you, dive in. But good. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that and for being engaged. Natalie, I know that's a very good question, but this is all around the philanthropy, not giving towards political campaigns. So hopefully the politics might be that, but I don't know. But yes, lots of giving here. Good. All right. Okay. All right. Going back to sharing my screen, and then I'm gonna share my slides. And thank you for your questions. All right, let's go to that second wheel on the grant management process, the grant writing and the submission. The pain points. All right, so again, because no grant proposal is alike, what I like to think about is that if you can understand these like top 10 things, you can write any grant. I feel very comfortable in that statement. So, yeah. So here we go. The number one, and we're going to go through each of these. The number one is the summary. 2 is the introduction. 3, need statement. 4, objectives. 5, methods. 6, evaluation. 7, sustainability. 8, budget. 9, partners and letters of support. 10, I put a little bucket together where I think critical tools are. We've already talked about 2 of the critical tools. We talked about the ABCDs of successful collaboration. And that's important because, you know, when we're trying to deliver high impact programming, we want to lean on our strengths, and maybe we partner so that we can mitigate some of those weaknesses, so that we can bolster our strengths. And then the data and the research, again, we want qualitative and quantitative recent data relevant to tell our story in a very compelling way. But let's start with the summary. Going to number 1. So number 1, the summary. Now, this is super important. The summary appears at the beginning of the proposal, but you prepare this last, because you write that summary after you have struggled with, you know, researched, have a full understanding of what it is that you propose to do. The summary is the last thing you write. I try to write my summaries as if the reviewer only read that 1 page, they will be comfortable writing the check to me. You know, that's how strong you want your summary to be. Again, it comes first, but you always deliver it last, because that's when you're the most knowledgeable about what it is that you're proposing. The summary is often very clear and concise, and it may include components like, you know, who the applicant is, what their credibility is, why you're asking for the resources, what things you want those dollars to fund, what might be the total cost, you know, things like that. So I put in like just a couple of examples of summaries from some different funded proposals that I've written. This one particularly, I went to the same funding sources, maybe 8-9 years apart, but you can see my style. Like, I tried to create a sense of urgency. I put in the data points, and then I try to say, despite the challenges, we can still win in this space because of what my organization is proposing. Like, and so that becomes incredibly powerful. I'm going to escape a little bit just so to zoom in, just to give you a kind of a sense of why the data can tell the story. So this was for a marketplace, El Mercado. And so it talks about the Hispanic Business Center proposes this El Mercado as a transformational vision for this neighborhood in Cleveland. There's a significant number of Hispanic Latino population in the city who are in poverty compared to the county, the state, and the country. This is straight from the US Census data. And so I'm making a compelling argument to show how intense the poverty is by putting it into context. In this city, it's greater than the county, the state, and the country. You know, and so and then I'm talking about this high levels of unemployment, again, giving it context. But then I don't say that like it's a lost cause. I'm like, amidst these challenges are significant opportunities, engaged stakeholders, and resilient neighborhood residents. Like, I'm given this feeling of possibility and hope. And then I talk about what it is, a strength-based economic development strategy. You know, I'm going to say where it's going to be located. Because it's a marketplace, we know that, you know, traffic is an important thing, like the visibility, location. So I talk about, like, this is a great place, thinking about the numbers, the greatest concentration in the state. I talk about this modeling, this approach, you know, being evidence-based and research informed, national best practice for creating community economic centers as a way to revitalize communities. I'm like, I didn't make this up. The data is saying that this is how we do it. I'm just modeling what the data is suggesting.
Is there a slide to go with all this?
Oh, you should be looking at it. You're not.
No.
Thank you. See what happens when you put your voice in the space? Magic happens. Yes, this is what you should be looking at. Thank you. So again, this is a zoom in of this slide. And so sorry that you missed all of that dynamic stuff, but it just kind of outlines what the story that's being told. And then again, it just walks through heavily traveled thoroughfare. It's going to create this many jobs. Place matters. Job creation is realizable. You know, fastest growing, one of the fastest growing ethnic groups becoming entrepreneurs. And then just leaving on a high note, you know, boom. And you can see this proposal, you know, several years earlier also funded. You see the same, you know, approach. My approach is the same. Creating a sense of urgency, using the data to tell the story for me, demonstrating that there is still hope and opportunity, you know. So again, despite the challenges, the number of blah, 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 and then I outline what it is. And I'll go to the next example. Again, this Central Jobs Plus pilot, a convergent strategy for a local place-based job-driven approach to increase earnings and employment, moving public housing residents from surviving to thriving. Like, I'm making a compelling argument, something that will grab and hold the attention as we move forward. Right. Okay, let's go to introduction, number 2. So again, number 1 is the summary. It comes first, but you write it last. All right, good. All right, now sharing my screen and now really sharing my slides. Thank you. Number 2, introduction. Again, this could be you're describing the qualification of the applicant, of your organization. Maybe you're telling some background. Maybe you've done something fantastic that you want the reviewer to know about. Maybe when you started, some significant things that's happened in your history, any prior activities that demonstrate you're the best organization to deliver this particular program. You know, what about your constituency that you're trying to serve, or the size or number that matters, or maybe you've been a supporter for other organizations. You know, it becomes really important. And then again, in your deck, you'll see an example of a need statement. Again, I start strongly. We were applying for a grant from the hospital system, and we wanted to talk about gun violence prevention as a public service approach, a public health approach. And so this idea that an investment here is much more of a value than what is being spent in the emergency rooms. And so we're making that argument. All right. Number 3, your need statement. Your need statement. Again, in this, you're really clearly articulating the purpose and the goal of the organization. You're going to use evidence to support this. You're going to make sure that what you're proposing you can reasonably achieve in the time period of the grant. And again, you're always stating the needs in terms of your clients or your constituents, not regarding the organization. So in this example, you know, this is like a funded example. And again, here, I'm going to try and zoom in a little bit, even though you'll have it. And I'm going to make sure I share the proper screen this time. I just wanted to show just how smooth the layout is when I try to talk about the need for assistance. So, you know, for example, I talk about the critical community barriers, high unemployment, high poverty, low educational attainment, limited access of micro enterprises owned by African Americans, and unmet need of small businesses. And then I break it down, like that paragraph serves as a roadmap. I talk about the need for the project. And then just as I said I would, I'm going to talk about unemployment. And then I reference the table, I discuss it, and then I provide the table. And again, if you look here, I always keep, this is all your census data. Now you'll go in and you'll realize that you're going to use these same, whenever you want to get information on unemployment and poverty, you can go to DP03, that's your census table, and it'll give you this information. And now you can look at it year over year, or you can look at it at city, county, state, and the country. And now you're making a compelling argument because you can see, wow, okay, this is significant. It is, you know, 3 times the national number, or things like that is how you can make the argument. So you're putting the information here. High poverty is especially high in the city of Cleveland. You know, the number far exceeds national percentages. And then you point to the table and you present the information. And here's this other table. And honestly, I keep these references because it's good for the reader, but it's also super good for me because now I know where to go back and get this information when I need it again, when I need to update it, when you need to use it for your next proposal. So things like that. All right, going back to share my screen, and I'm going to share my slides. Okay, good. Or we can narratively, because sometimes we don't have the luxury of the PDF of pages. Many grants now, you have to type in and it has to be a certain number of characters. And here's just a way you can present this information. You know, again, you use the data to kind of tell the story and why it matters. So good. All right. Okay. All right. Number 4, objectives. Objectives are really getting at what are some of the outcomes of your activities. You know, these might be related. These are related to the program. You know, maybe you can think of it in terms of what are you going to increase or decrease or reduce. And you want to make sure that your objectives, they might tell the who or the what or the when or the how much or how you're going to measure it. And so here, you know, you get to, you start to move from this idea. So maybe you start from, you work through where you have an objective and then you rework it to just make it sharper and then you make it smart. And so, you know, so like this is a good goal to assist youth with disabilities, for example, right? But man, you could strengthen it and presenting it differently, enhance participation in society of youth with disability. But then when you smarten it up to create 50 new employment opportunities for youth with disabilities by 2025, when you've smartened it up, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And we'll talk about this next week when we do the toolbox. But this is when it starts to get super powerful. You know, housing for youth aging out of foster care. Like that's important, but man, let's write it better to ensure that youth aging out of foster care have safe, decent, affordable housing. And then when we smarten it up, to build 25 units of affordable rental housing for youth aging out of foster care in fiscal year 2025. Okay, I have great clarity about what you're going to do when you smarten up your objectives. So again, when you do these things, when you smarten them up, it just really helps you, you know? So to provide faster service, to reduce waiting time by 15% in 1 year. Specific, you know, it is reducing the waiting time. That is a way to have faster service. Measurable, 15%. Achievable, you didn't say 100% of the time. Relevant, you know, I'm happy if you're not wasting my time. I feel like I've received better service. Time bound, you're going to make that happen in 1 year. To assist justice impacted youth. Okay, that's wonderful. But what happens when you smarten it up? To create 50 new employment opportunities for justice impacted youth by 2024. Specific. So it's new employment opportunities, measurable, 50, achievable. All right, 50, you got some good connections. You know, you've been successful the previous year with job placement. Relevant, employment is a way to assist justice impacted youth because there are lots of barriers to employment. Time bound, you're going to do it by 2024. A smart objective is very powerful. To improve healthy food access. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. But what happens if you can just smarten it up? Specific, you know, community gardens. Community gardens is one way to improve healthy food access. Measurable, you're going to do 12 of them. Achievable, all right, you own 8 lots already, you know, so getting another 4, you already have a connection with the city where you can get the lots for an affordable price. Relevant, community gardens is definitely a way to improve healthy food access. Time bound, you're going to do it by summer 2024. Smart objectives, those are super amazing. When you can create a smart objective, it becomes very powerful. And you can create smart objectives for anything. You know, if you want to exercise regularly, you want to save more, you want, you know, so many things that you can smart objective around. All right. So how about create a smart objective and put it in the chat? I was going to skip this, but I decided not to. If we run out of time, we run out of time. So let's see, put a smart objective, anything. It could be around anything. Create a smart objective and pop it into the chat. Anything specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. It could be anything. Pop it in the chat. Here's some examples. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Let's see. Okay, Lori, that's a good objective, but it's not smart. So specific. How are you going to lose weight? Is it through diet or exercise? how much, when. Try again. Stephanie, strategic planning is a good objective, but smarten it up. Does that mean what are you going to do in order to do your strategic planning? Okay, increase youth employment leaders. So increasing youth employment rates by 2025. How much, Kedrian, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. Like, is it specific youth employment rates by how much though? Is it by 10% or by that way you get a target?
Percentage, like increasing so getting the statistics that you were talking, the data that you were referencing earlier, and then showcasing with a percentage that you were going to increase it by. I get it. Okay.
Okay, good. Because if you can do that, it helps everybody keeps their eye on the prize.
Got it.
Create 25 new youth program leaders. Excellent, Angela, spot on. Lose 10 pounds through diet and exercise in 4 months. There you go, Laura. You nailed it right there. Now, 100 lunches to low-income youth during the summer for 1 week. Excellent, Natalie. Excellent. Yes. Okay, 50 students work. Yes. Reduce marijuana use amount youth between 12 to 14-year-old in the community of and then Virginia, the only thing missing is by when or over 6 months. So the time-bound piece is the only part missing. Okay, Taylor, sorry, Black Youth Nonprofit Organization, by when? That's the only thing. Your time-bound is missing on that one. Matthew, I'm going to buy myself 5 new. Love that. All right, you hit it. Yes, all of it there. Yes. 10 mental physicians by 20. That's it, Melissa. Increase affordable mental health sessions. All you're missing is a time bound. So, 1 year. I see it. Nadine, spot on. You got it. Develop a youth circle to increase the youth, 20 youth. Excellent. Yes. Yes. Lisa, increase the number of monthly gifted. By when? Lisa, that's the only thing, 12 months. Okay, excellent. Yes, excellent. Okay, Virginia, 2026. Excellent. All right, good run. Outstanding. Thank you. Outstanding. All right, number 5, methods. So the methods piece is really you're thinking about what steps did you do or take in order to receive this particular action? And the most important things around method is clarity and justification. Clarity just makes sure that it's understandable and that, or that you include an explanation, because we never know who might be reading the proposal. Maybe, sometimes reviewers get invited in and they're from the community. Maybe they don't have the expertise. So you just want to be mindful that you explain so that it's clear. And then justifiable. Maybe you're describing the things that you've done already, or you've presented evidence on why these things work. Okay, maybe I'm not sharing my screen. Thank you. Keeping me honest. I appreciate you, Angela. Excellent. I'm going to move this one over so I can just see a little bit better. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay, so clear. You need clarity and it needs to be justifiable. The justification, again, you might talk about your previous work, or you might present research or evidence from an adjacent field that demonstrates that what you're stating is going to be impactful. Number 6 is evaluation. So this one can be tough because sometimes, you just might want to say, I'm going to take 10% of this and get an outside evaluator. And there's lots of universities that do that type of work, and they have lots of approaches. But if you need to do some of that evaluation on your own, there are 2 buckets to really look at. This product outcome or impact evaluation. Again, you're looking at to what extent did you achieve your stated goals and objectives? What extent did you accomplish those objectives that you accomplish? How can you make them attributable to the program that you delivered? And then the second type, again, is this process evaluation. And again, this one's a little more doable if you need to do this on your own, whether the program was conducted in a manner and consistent with how you proposed that it would be. And again, looking at the relationships and the activities and the effectiveness of your program. So again, a process evaluation versus a product outcome or impact evaluation. Number 7 is sustainability. Now, this one can be tricky because people always think, oh, the funder expects me to be able to run this on my own after this year. Not No, it's confusing. I know, but that's not what they mean. They just want to know, what other future and necessary funding are you going to go after and how are you going to go after it? What are you going to do beyond the funding of the grant? And the way that you can respond to this question is maybe you're thinking about creating a social enterprise. You're diversifying your funding of your organization. Maybe there's a fee for service or there's a third party payer or there's some non-grant fundraising activities, that you have going on. Maybe your profitable services offset the costs. Maybe you have some other expanded fundraising events coming up. Maybe you're developing a membership strategy as a way to build some and develop more funding for your organization. So, but sustainability often, tricks us up because we think, that there's an expectation for this to be us to be able to deliver the programs without support. That's not what the question asks. And then it also becomes confusing because sometimes the sustainability is around the green recycling piece, but typically when the discussion is around sustainability, it's really funding beyond the grant. Number 8, the budget and the budget summary. The budget is really important. It's the estimate of the costs. You want the numbers to be as specific as possible. The way that the funders often collect this information is through the different categories: personnel, non-personnel, lots of federal funding. Just very recently now just providing a percentage for indirect costs, 10%. It used to be only set aside for more established organizations. Now it's more reasonable. The other thing that's important is the budget summary. You write this after you write up the budget, and it's just the narration of the numbers, because the numbers don't tell the story fully. You need to be able to explain the numbers. Now, I personally like to use a sources and uses where I say, here are where the sources of the money are coming from, and this is how I'm going to use those dollars. But the most important part on the budget piece that is important is that the budget, being thoughtful about the budget is important, because let's just say, for example, you didn't put in your budget transportation cost, right? But then as you're delivering your program, you realize, oh my God, I need bus passes or Uber stipends or something. And so you're like, okay, I put too much money in the supply line item. I need to use some of that money for transportation. Now, if you don't have a transportation line item, then you can't just put the money in transportation, because that's not what you agreed to. Like, you have to go back to the funder and say, hey, I did not put this line item in. I realized that I need more transportation dollars. Can we do a budget modification? And now you need to get the permission. Maybe something gets written. Maybe something needs to get re-executed. So thinking about the budget is a really important thing. Now, if you had a transportation line item, but maybe you needed more money in that transportation line item and you overestimated what you needed in supplies, then it's much easier to decrease your supply line item and increase your transportation line item. Now, just as an aside, for many federal funders, if you still might need to get the approval, but it's a much easier approval than the absence of a line item and adding to this grant a new line item versus moving funds from one line item to another. So that becomes really, really important. And again, can you grant extension justification statement? And so the other opportunities. So there was
Unhappy.
Gabriel, you had another question, or a question that came up in the chat is what might be a justification for extension? So this one is real life, in that oftentimes we believe it's going to be quick for us to staff up. Oh my goodness. Can I just tell you, staffing up is a very difficult thing. We need to, if we already don't have on our team who we're going to potentially put in a position to do some new program, and who's going to take that person's position, staffing up can be a challenge. Getting talent, retaining talent, training the talent, onboarding the talent, like, it's taking more than time than what we need. And so that can often delay us. And so it is reasonable if you can demonstrate that you started on time. It just took longer than what you anticipated to hire the staff to put in place to execute the program. But being able to communicate with your grant person is really powerful. That communication piece is going to save you every time. I'll give you an example. I did a proposal. It was $800,000 to do this healthy food cafe, and then after the organization secured the dollars, they learned of an opportunity of a grocery store who was going to open a new headquarters, and they were like, "Oh my goodness, we could do even more jobs if we worked with this on this project instead of the Healthy Food Cafe." I was like, well, let's just ask. All I can say is no. I think you might have heard no before, right? So let's just ask. And so I put together a revision, and I just said, we initially said we were going to do this. Now we would like to do this. We're going to do this many more jobs. We're going to do this differently. This is how the partner is going to change just slightly. And we can have an even greater impact by reutilizing the dollars in this way. They absolutely gave us the permission, but what worked was that we were transparent, we communicated, and we committed to continue to achieve those outcomes at an even greater level. All right. All right, how do you do a state funder that has no contact person to deal with, just an email? You still send them an email. And you keep the track, the track, and you're like, I'm following up on the email sent such and such a date, or you keep the email train. The state can be tough sometimes because they're often under resourced, but if you're doing the things that you need to do and you're getting back, they're responding back to you, then that becomes important. And if not, then use your contacts. Like, so if your state representative, if they're not, how are you tapping into your network in that regard so that you can get through or make connections too? And again, so there's another question in the chat about applying for future grants, but maybe you don't want to have that same partnership. That's perfectly fine. It is your choice to potentially continue with an existing partner or to move forward with a new partner. As the applicant, you're the awardee of record, for example, and if you want to bring in a new partner because you realize there's need, I'm making this up, there's need for early child care, and you want to partner with a child care provider so that you can be more, help young moms by providing like stable child care so that they can get skilled, and this partner is willing to do that. Like, you just make that compelling argument using that data and information. It doesn't mean that your previous partnership or your previous approach is invalidated. It's just you feel like you can do something more and greater based upon the research and the evidence, and you make that clear. All right, going back to share my slides, sharing my screen. And we'll do also more of this on our next session too. Number 9, the partners and letters of support. Now, this is important because I'll always put a table, especially if it's one of those you write the narrative and then you can put a PDF, because I never know if the reviewer is going to know that I got such a fantastic lineup of partners. So this is an actual example where I talked about, okay, I got a letter from the U.S. Senator, I got a letter from the mayor, I got a letter from the director of this organization, and a little blurb just like copied and pasted from their website that talks about why this is such an important community partner, things like that. The tools, I'm a huge advocate for canva.com. It's like graphic designer in the box. If I need to make a little diagram or infographic, that can be super helpful in the submissions. Another critical tool is the SWOT analysis. I talk about the importance of partnerships and the importance of knowing what your strengths are. Do an internal assessment. Just think about, what are your strengths of the organizations? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? What are your threats? And then you lead with your strengths and opportunities. And maybe you think about your partners when you think about the weaknesses and the threats. The thing about strengths and weaknesses can be internal to the organization. You can think of it as that. opportunities and threats maybe could be external to the organization. That's a way to think about that. Also know that a strength can be a weakness depending on context. That's a really true thing about the SWOT analysis. And we'll do more on SWOT both next week and during strategic planning, because it's another very useful tool for that work. And then the logic model is the last critical tool that I'll reference. And again, we'll do more on this next week, as well as during the strategic planning session. This is also a wonderful performance evaluation tool. And we'll walk through what the logic model looks like and how to build one. So these are the critical tools that I think are super important: data and research, your SMART objectives, having a design tool if you need it, and the SWOT analysis and the logic model. So I'm going to pause to see if there are any questions, because the only thing next is your to-go box. So any questions? I took a couple of them in the chat. I hope I didn't miss anything. If I did miss something, put it back in the okay. Boy. Okay. Here's a good one about thank you, Dougie. I love that. Look at you, made my heart flutter. Okay. All right. Question about fiscal agent. So there's a question in the chat about the fiscal agent partner who controls the staffing and to their, listen, that fiscal agent, you better negotiate, so if you have a fiscal agent, they're earning a fiscal agent fee and they're delivering some very specific services. You're still, saying that this is how we plan to deliver the program. You're still the power and the worker in that relationship. And there are also other fiscal agents available who you could potentially connect with and utilize if you're not in a good relationship with your current fiscal agent, so. Oh, fiscal agent. So for example, thank you for your question, Victor, and thank you for calling me on that language. So sometimes organizations who may not have their own 501c3, or maybe they're a brand new 501c3, they feel like they still have this great idea around programming, but they don't have the ability to tap into foundation dollars, because typically foundations have to give to grants to organization with a 501c3 tax exemption status. So what happens is that a nonprofit decides to work with a fiscal agent, and they pay that fiscal agent a fee, and then the fiscal agent will apply for the grant on behalf of the nonprofit, or they'll say that we're working with this organization, this is the program that they're going to deliver, we're serving as the fiscal agent. They receive the dollars and they sort of pass through those dollars. They have their fee, or maybe they deliver some of the HR or the payroll kind of work in as a part of their work as fiscal agent. And so this allows the organization to operate as if it were a nonprofit, even though it doesn't have its 501c3 just yet. So fiscal agents are a very popular tool to use for nonprofit organizations who are still working on getting their nonprofit or tax exempt status, or those who feel like they're too young to be able to get their own grant because they don't have, for example, their audited financial statements or their tax returns 2 years worth of 990s, which is something very typical that a foundation would ask for if you're submitting for a grant.
Question.
Yes, please.
I said, yes, please. Hi, Frank Kelly. You did a great presentation. Hey, I just wondered, are we going to be able to get a hard copy of all the resources that you gave? Because I missed a couple of them because you were going a little faster than I could.
I know, I'm sorry. Frank, you were supposed to slow me down.
You were on a roll. You're like, okay, she's on a roll. She got this great smile. I'm let her keep moving. All right. I'll catch her at the end and ask her, for the resources so we can have it,
Absolutely.
I'm
Yes.
old. Yeah, I like paper, a lot of paper stuff.
We're going to make sure you get a PDF of the slides. I'm going to save the slides as single slides. It's going to be a lot of them, but at least you'll be able to see everything. And we also recorded the session, so I apologize if I was going too fast. I did have a lot of stuff.
I'm just a little faster than I can keep up. But the other question I have is because I've been working with a couple of retired guys on my board, and they were working for office, and they were telling me about a capital campaign as a way of raising funds. And I really don't understand it a lot. I know, that there are people who give dollars from, like when you get your paycheck and your paycheck has so many dollars taken out and it goes to somebody else.
Yes.
For charity. Is that still something that
So it is the people who are excellent at that is United Way. United Way has that workforce campaign where you can allocate. I mean, United Way is really, that was quite brilliant on the way that they were able to get themselves into people's paychecks. But even though there isn't a lot of that, there is definitely a way that you can set that up. Because now everybody does that. Like your gym membership is on a subscription model. Your Word and Excel is on a subscription model. Put your nonprofit on a subscription model. Build your marketing campaign to say, hey, be a sustaining member for this work. We're $25 a month, and you can set it up so that they provide the information and they get billed $25 a month. And I'm telling you, it's a excellent approach. So Mr. Kelly, you're thinking exactly right. Like, how do you make giving, seamless as possible and easy as possible? And maybe we can't get all the way to the paycheck, but we can get close by creating this sort of like sustainer model and making a big deal out of your sustainer, supporters,
Let's build your own.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We're
You're
looking.
Wonderful. Okay, so is there a fiscal consultant who writes the proposal? So Angela, that it could be your fiscal agent is going to put together, maybe, but is that, are you willing to pay for that? They might charge, that might be a hefty fee for that. Would they write it in a way that you would, or maybe that's what you want. You want to be able to sit down with the grant writer that they may have on staff and, give them your brilliance and have them put together the specific, paperwork for the submission. So those are all great questions to ask. I'll put a note in my follow-up materials to also send information on fiscal agents so you get a sense of it. Good. All right, this is very fair. I think Angela Moore gave a great 5 to 8%. Yes. Awesome. Yes. Good. I think the Greek grant extension example was like the having the ability to having the slow start on the staffing. Another challenge that is real that I've seen organizations have to manage is they didn't realize that they had received a reimbursable grant. So, you didn't negotiate or you don't have enough resources to fund your movement so that you can get reimbursed. So you have to be very mindful and clear about what type of grant you've just won, because there are some organizations who will write you the check. Bless those organizations. But then there are those who are like, okay, spend some money. Oftentimes this is a classic city, for example. If you get a grant from a city, they're like, okay, do your services. Okay, quarterly, you can invoice us, and we're going to take another quarter before we pay you back. So really, you're going to be 6 months out of resources before you get the first 3 months back. So it's things like that.
You get approached for writing grants all the time, and people they see the headline, they see it's for a 501c3, and that's when they stop reading. They don't read to see if it's a matching grant. They don't, read to see, all the details. They just go, oh, it's for 501c3 and it's for youth services. Okay, that's for me. And I constantly have to tell people, read the entire thing to make sure it's what you want. Sometimes the grants are for programs only. You can't use them for operations or salaries or anything. Make sure that that thing is what you want before you spend time, energy, and probably money to have somebody write a proposal.
Amen. Yes. So this has been awesome. The rest of the slides, just kind of in your to-go box, it just talks about the other parts of the wheel and the grants management process. I tried to put good detail on the slide so that you can read through it. Again, I hope you are able to join us next week. I'm going to do a lot less talking and a lot more engaging, but I wanted to give you a foundation today so we can build from that next week. And I look forward to seeing you next week.